All right, this time we're going to resume the meeting of 9/17/2018. Councilmember Clower, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Move to roll call, please.
Councilmember Gilio?
Here.
Vice Mayor Luna?
Here.
Mayor Velasquez?
Here.
Councilmember Clower?
Here.
City Manager Avera?
Present.
City Attorney Epperson?
Here.
Police Chief Westrick?
Here.
Here.
City Clerk Black?
Here.
The agenda for the city of Hollister City Council meeting of September 17th, 2018 was posted on the bulletin board on September 12th, 2018 at 4:30 p.m. per Government Code Section 54954.2.
Thank you very much. City Attorney, do you want to report out of closed session, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council convened into closed session at 6 p.m. and discussed items 1 through 7 as agendized in the closed session. Those would be conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.8 and 54957B1 regarding Information Services Manager, Development Services Director, Management Services Director, Administrative Services Director, Fire Chief, and Police Chief, and direction was given to staff and agency negotiator. City Council adjourned from closed session at 6:29 p.m.
Thank you very much. We're going to move to the consent agenda. Are there any items council would like to pull? I want to pull item A11, A12, A13, A14. Do we have any from the public?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
The motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, good evening. Abraham with the City of Hollister Development Services Planning Department. Item A11 is a resolution asking for an approval of an annexation agreement between the property owner of Pat Investment and the City of Hollister for the property identified as APN 1935012. This property is a part of a 100-acre property that was approved for pre-zone in August, and the majority of the area is zoned for or pre-zoned for residential. There is about 18 acres that is pre-zoned for North Gateway commercial, and so as part of after the planning, the City Council has approved the pre-zoning. Part of the requirement is that the property owner goes into an annexation agreement, essentially indicating that the property owner would abide by all regulations that the City of Hollister has upon annexation of the property into the City of Hollister. And so this is a requirement. Essentially, the applicant has reviewed the annexation agreement, has signed, and now it is brought before you for signature by the City of Hollister. The mayor will be signing on behalf of the City of Hollister. Are there any questions?
So I brought this up. This is to build more single-family homes along Santa Ana Airline, correct?
It is pre-zoned for R1. That is correct.
So this is not in the city right now. It's in the county.
Yes.
Trying to get annexed into the city.
That is correct, Mr.
And the
Mayor,
reason
yes.
I have an issue with this is something I've talked about many times in the past is we have such a lousy tax sharing agreement right now with the county that our percentage of this is very small. Is that correct?
So that's part of it, Mr. Mayor. The annexation agreement does talk about the annexation agreement, and it does indicate that the applicant or property owner shall abide by the annexation agreement. part of the stipulation indicates that it is currently under litigation, and if it changes, then the property owner would agree to pay whichever the court decides.
But the issue I have is that we should have worked this out with the county first to get a fair tax sharing agreement. And when you have a $500,000 home and the city's portion of the property tax is $185, that's a pretty poor agreement. If, for an example, this was in the county side, how much would the city get from the county for the county building homes?
For the tax sharing agreement?
We get nothing.
Correct.
We get nothing from the county.
Right.
County takes almost all the money, and yet we're stuck with the burden of the infrastructure. As I said before, we need to get these things figured out first before we proceed down this path. We should learn from the past of some of these issues, and I don't understand why we're even talking about annexing more land just to build more single-family homes. It absolutely makes no sense to me.
There was the court ruling at first indicated that there shall be no further annexations until the annexation agreement was either adjusted or agreed upon by the city and county. But then the court ruling, my understanding was that it can continue as long as it's under litigation until they make a determination. It could continue. That's why it's brought before you today. The property owner is aware that if the ruling is made and there is a new property tax sharing agreement or a new fee, then that would be the new fee. But the court ruling allowed it to proceed. Otherwise, we wouldn't have brought it before you.
Right.
Right.
But if we don't prevail, we get stuck with the lousy agreement.
With the current one that was made between the city and county.
If I may, I've said this before. The annexation process doesn't necessarily mean somebody's going to be building homes. The property tax sharing agreement only applies to, generally speaking, when people develop their pieces of property. Some of this property was actually is in the sphere of influence. It's one of the few times that the city of Hollister has been able to look at multiple properties in an area to do sort of an area master plan to accommodate both traffic, circulation, parks that are going to adjacent to several properties, and I know that we've actually even talked about a potential school site in there as well. So okay. I just, for the audience and for the council's, I mean, I know the council already understands this, is that the annexation of property doesn't necessarily mean equate into development. We've had several properties in the city of Hollister that has gone through annexations that have not developed. So I want to make sure that there's that distinction.
Correct.
I just want to repeat what I've said earlier. We have a lousy agreement that we need to hammer out first before we ever talk about annexing any more property to the city, especially just to build more single-family homes. Councilmember Clower?
So this agreement was agreed to by a previous council with a previous board of supervisors in, is it 2011, I think?
That's my understanding, yes, 2011.
Okay, and it expires in 2021, I believe?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, and so we've had some sporadic talks with the county for the last 2 years. I think we even have an ad hoc committee that is designed to deal with this situation. And I think that some of us who are up here are on it, and that committee has not met with the county. So I just want to point out that if we're going to try to hold things up, that committee should be meeting and negotiating with the county so that this problem, if it is a problem, can be fixed.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Clower, also, with the exception of some minor changes, the 2011 property tax sharing agreement was essentially the same agreement that was actually adopted in 1999. So it was a 1999 to 2009. There was a couple of years where we didn't have a property tax sharing agreement. It eventually got extended in 2011 to 2021.
Vice Mayor Luna?
Yes, Abraham, my question is that the discussion on this began in possibly even 1999. It goes to 2011 when it was documented. even after any action on the behalf of this council, it still goes to LAFCO, correct?
Correct. So the agreement essentially is indicating that in the case that LAFCO approves the annexation that was recommended by the City Council as part of the pre-zone and as part of a resolution indicating to LAFCO to initiate proceedings for annexation, yes, it would still go to LAFCO prior to any annexation. LAFCO would be the one that would have to make that call. But we first want to make sure that the developer or the property owner signs this agreement, basically indicating that if it does go to LAFCO prior to annexation, we have that agreement in place saying that they will abide by City of Hollister regulation as opposed to the county as they were.
So any consideration given for a possible annexation, actually the concern is that if we had two people on this city council who are supposed to be meeting with the county and haven't done it, and yet it brings attention tonight that we should be waiting for the county. Well, you know what? It's our fault too, because somebody is not meeting to consider this and to actually bring us more information. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a recommendation coming from the City Council going to LAFCO, where we have members of this City Council sitting on LAFCO that will have the opportunity to speak on this. So actually, I think it's a communication that is not there, and I have a concern about that. So I'm thinking, you know what, we have this here, and if there's any possibility that annexation comes into the city of Hollister and there's a possible school being considered there, right, and it doesn't move, then we are stopping something that is valuable to the city, to the families of this community. Correct?
Right. Correct, Councilmember Luna. And one of the mitigation measures on the pre-zoning, when the pre-zoning was reviewed and prior to it being approved, one of the mitigation measures indicated that prior to any development being considered on the site, we would need to see an overall master plan of the area. The school district, you mentioned the school site. The school district was informed of this as well. They are one of the city's, the lead agencies, responsible agencies. The city being the lead agency on the CEQA document, and they would have to also include as a prerequisite include the school site, the potential school site. So we would want to see an overall area development before development is even considered on how circulation is going to be, how infrastructure is going to be, how any residential and or commercial and the school site as well is going to be contemplated on the overall site, not just on individual parcels, but the entire site. So this is a good opportunity for master plan per the California Environmental Quality Act Environmental Impact Report that was adopted by your council.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, let me clarify a few things about this lack of meetings. I was on that committee. I was at a meeting about this very issue, and the response from the county was very clear. We're not changing anything. If you don't like it, too bad. This will be our last meeting. That was the last meeting, because it's not good enough for us to get $185 in property tax from a $500,000 home. And let me talk about schools, since we're going to talk about this idea of a school being built here. Let me tell you the realities of a school cost. 2,000 homes equals one new school. The amount of impact fees collected for that new school from those homes is equivalent to about $15 million. The cost to build a new school, elementary school, is about $50 million. So everybody here gets to pay an additional $35 million to build that new school. So let's be clear about these dollars and how it really works, so that people understand when that additional item is put onto their property tax, why it happened. No school is going to be built for free.
Right.
So let's not a school site and so on and so on. We can present many examples here tonight of that failure. I'm talking about something we need to hammer out before we ever start talking about annexing more land to build more homes. Do we have any speaker cards?
Marty Richmond.
Good evening, members of the council. Marty Richmond Hollister. Now, I've spoken on this issue on all sides of it, and frankly, what broke out here is just a political argument. And you know, I can tell you as a member of this community, I'm just tired of it. Okay. I'm going to point out, I'm not on the county side, but I'm going to point out we took $70 million in taxes out of the county for the RDA, and we never said, excuse me. So it is no wonder that they would like to get some of their money back. I think they have a legitimate argument to say that. Another thing I'm going to point out is that every dollar commercial almost goes into the city. A tax, which is going to be 1%, which is going to be 2% if we're lucky for the roads, is going into the city. So whoever builds those houses, we're going to get the tax money, and that's why the county wants to maintain some of the other money. As far as the school goes, the school's getting built, and the taxpayers are paying for it one way or another. The idea that only city taxpayers pay for it, only county taxpayers pay for it, that's baloney, because we send the money to the state. The state's going to pay for it, and it's all our tax money anyway, so it doesn't make any difference. You know, I got to tell you, as a member of this community, I'm just tired of this. If you guys wanted to hammer out that tax agreement, you would get in there and hammer it out. You don't want to hammer it out. You just, all sides are just stalling here. It's obvious what's going on. You ought to just be fair. And if you say, the mayor says, well, the county won't do it, I go talk to the county people, as they say, well, the mayor won't do it. So I don't know who to blame, because I don't know who's telling the truth. But I went to the meeting about it, and you know what the first thing the guy says is it requires good faith negotiation, and I'm not sure anybody's doing good faith negotiation. So if this argument was about this annexation, I would get up here and talk about this annexation. But it's not really about this annexation. It's all about, oh, who's going to build a house, who's not going to build a house. The truth of the matter is, with our CFD, new one, number 5, we're going to take $750 out of every one of those houses for police and fire. I live in an old house here. I don't pay anything. I'm happy not to pay anything. And many of the people who lived here 30 years are not paying a dime. So the new people are paying for it, and they're going to pay for police and fire, and they're going to pay for roads. They're going to pay for roads through the nose. So I don't know how it'll wind up when it's all over, but I would just wish you guys would really start arguing about what it's about and not about politics. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have another speaker first?
Victor Gomez.
Honorable Counsel, Victor Gomez here representing the applicant. First of all, these 13 parcels that were pre-zoned for annexation are not houses, and there is no project. There is no project application in for any of this. The project area also includes commercial. So you're talking about shooting down commercial development, and we've also had conversations with the superintendent of the Hollister School District to identify a site in the residentially zoned area of this project to build a new school. We're aware of it. The Hollister School District, I think Peter Hernandez is here with the school district. They've identified that area as a potential site for a new school. So first of all, again, there is no project. The single-family homes, that's news to me. Okay, there is no project. Okay, it's zoned correctly. You're right. There's also commercial zoning, and there's a potential for a new school. So let's make sure all the facts are out there. Okay. Now, the impact fees on schools, that's not a decision for us to make. That's a state decision, as you know, Mr. Mayor. That's a decision that's made by the state of California. I wish I could twist those political arms. I can't do that. Again, if this annexation needs to be protested, allow LAFCO to take this application for annexation and allow us to have that conversation with the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's no more. Oh. Okay. Elia Salinas.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. I think you should just stick to the facts and stick to the point. Get the egos aside. And if you couldn't have any meetings, you need to grow up. And both the county and the city need to start negotiating. This is only one subject, and there's many more that are out there. Get this going through, let LAFCO decide, and then it can come back. But right now, you're just pandering, and you're trying to put it out there that you don't want any more houses, and this is not exactly what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
No more
Okay.
speakers.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve resolution number 2018-221.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
No. 3-1. Move to item 12.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, item 12 is essentially a follow-up from item number 11. Item 12 essentially is recommending, now that the annexation agreement has been approved, essentially recommending a resolution to LAFCO in allowing LAFCO to initiate proceedings for annexation. The way that they can initiate proceedings for annexation is, one, if the CEQA document was approved, which it was by the council back in June. Two, if the pre-zoning was approved by the council, which it was in August, the second reading. And so, and three is that the annexation agreement is approved, which was just done with this previous item. So therefore, the next item would be this item before you, which is essentially approving a resolution requesting LAFCO to initiate proceedings for the annexation. Once it gets to LAFCO, pending approval by LAFCO, they still would have to abide by all the annexation agreements requirements that was just approved, by all city policy, and by the mitigation measures that were approved by the environmental impact report, one of which is to essentially plan out the whole 118 acres, including commercial, including residential, including potential site for a school district, including all infrastructure, including accessibility, roads, parks, open space, and so forth. So this essentially is a resolution allowing LAFCO to initiate proceedings for annexation. Any questions for staff?
Any questions?
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Luna?
Abraham, actually now it passes on to LAFCO, and what is the time frame there for any discussion on this resolution and,
Right.
moving forward?
Thank you, Councilmember Luna. The item that would go before LAFCO upon the application going to LAFCO would be a public hearing. So therefore, they would have to take the proper steps for a public hearing. The application would have to be submitted to them. They would have to review the application, make sure it's complete, then essentially send out a public notice to the newspaper, send out notification to the neighbors, and then do their public hearing, which essentially can take about 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks.
Correct, for them to have a public hearing.
And you did mention that this information would be sent to the neighborhood or the neighbors surrounding this area?
Part of the public hearing notice requires that notification be sent at minimum to the newspaper, and our public notice in the city is that it gets sent out to neighbors within at minimum 300 feet from the project site. So I'm thinking that LAFCO has a very similar process, if not the same.
And I'm sure that LAFCO would be including the Hollister School District, maybe possibly for commentaries, or I'd like to hear more from the Hollister School District on that too.
Yeah, we can definitely let the executive officer know that the Hollister School District should continue to be included as they were in the process with the city of Hollister during the pre-zone process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As I said earlier, my earlier statement stands on this issue, on this item also. Do we have any speaker cards on this one?
Yes. I forgot to read the title on the last one. A12 Resolution 2018-222, a resolution for application by the City of Hollister requesting the Local Agency Formation Commission of San Benito County to initiate proceedings for the annexation of territory of the parcel identified as APN 019350012. First speaker is Marty Richmond.
see you, Marty.
Oh, I didn't hear you, I'm sorry. I only have one ear that's working and it was turned off. Excuse me. I have a question for the staff, so I just want to make sure I get an accurate answer. Not that you wouldn't give me an accurate answer at this, but I want to make sure it's staff. It's my understanding from the map law that the city of Hollister, for this, if it turns into a project, still has design and improvement authority over this project. In other words, we can tell them we don't like your design, and we can tell them we don't like your improvement. And if we got any brains at all, we're not going to let them charge us for the school portion, what they did up at Santana Ranch, and charge it out as what it was worth after they build houses on it. We're going to demand that we either pay whatever the raw value was of the land, or they donate it. So I want the audience to know, and I'm speaking to you, but I'm also speaking to the people behind me, that we're not giving up our right to go in there and say we don't like what you're proposing. We don't giving up our right to say you're not making the improvements we want. We're not giving up our right to say your traffic flow stinks and we don't like the way it's done. In fact, we maintain all our rights, and I've encouraged this the city staff and the city council to exercise those rights judiciously and make sure that we get what we want out of every single development we approve. Not just look at it and say, oh, the heck with it, it looks like every other development. That's really important to me. And I think it makes a difference between whether the community accepts something or says that was a terrible one. There's no reason. What makes a good community is not nose count. There's plenty of communities in this state that are terrific, that have a lot more people than we got, because they've exercised their right not just to be hard-headed, but they've exercised their right to say, here's what we want, and here's what it needs to look like, and here's how it needs to work. And I think we have the commitment to do that. So I'll leave time to make sure I get an answer from staff that we still have design and improvement authority per the MAP law in the state of California. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Peter Hernandez.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Thank you for my 3 minutes. I just wanted to make sure since I didn't expect actually to mention this, but figuring the fact that I'm here in the Hollister School District and I'm not speaking on their behalf, I'm speaking as an individual board member, obviously partaking in the whole purchase of that property. So yeah, we purchased it for $5 million. It was ultimately, there was a lot of frustration, at least on my behalf, because as Marty Richmond had shared, I really appreciate, there was an opportunity for us to actually have that property way in advance. I can't imagine the negotiations that happened because it was a long time ago, but all I know is the end outcome is that we paid $5 million for something that before that development actually even happened, when it was a piece of dirt, which I know we could have gotten a whole lot better deal. We didn't. And it actually speaks to the whole idea that we're getting fed a lot of information, or at least accurate information. We have to disseminate a lot of different things, and at the end of the day, depend on staff, which really at that point we're having to dig deeper to find out what the reality is versus what we're being shared. Not to say that there's an intent, but ultimately there's inconsistencies at times when we hear things and then versus what we're actually engaging in conversations about. So I just want to make sure that I share the clarity, at least in my perspective, is sometimes relationships are kind of a layer farther out removed, which means at the time that we end up getting it, it's kind of like that whole, back in the day when you were kids and you had that telephone conversation by the third person. By the time you get to that third person, all of a sudden you're actually filtered something that's completely different than what you're being told. So there's a lot of different things that we're dealing with as far as the school district goes. I definitely wish, and just to be clear, I did hear about a new school, but that's all I heard. I didn't hear where or what, the cost, anything. There was no clarity. So definitely we're being told things, but to what extent we're actually being clear about knowing what we're being told, it's a whole different and at that point, it's our job to make sure that we're having conversations with staff so that we get a better understanding. Obviously, on the dais, I do my best to make sure that we're having a better understanding versus what we're being shared. So anyways, I just wanted to share my piece on it. I think we could definitely do a better job. I do believe we should be working harder at building relationships and not breaking them. And I know that there's obviously issues, not just on the council side, but with the county and obviously with the school district. I want to make sure that they don't just look at us as individuals that are just going to approve things, but ultimately that they're actually going to feed us information that's going to cause us to have a good conversation about what the reality is, so we make better decisions to affect the better outcomes for our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are no more speakers.
Would you like staff to answer the question?
Yeah,
in regards-
absolutely.
Yeah, so pending that this resolution before you gets approved, then the next step would be the applicant files an application with LAFCO for annexation. They actually submit it to the city staff. Staff files on behalf of the applicant, and pending annexation by LAFCO, then the applicant would then at that point be officially within the city of Hollister, and the pre-zoning that was approved by the council would then be a zoning designation for that property. So then the applicant absolutely would have to follow all the zoning regulations for the property, including any type of entitlement requirements, site and architectural for any new building that's considered to be commercial, subdivision, either minor or major subdivision for any type of subdivision of land, and that would have to abide by local ordinance, including the annexation agreement that was just approved for the property, and the Subdivision Map Act as well, and also the California Environmental Quality Act. So all of that would have to apply through the city of Hollister's entitlement process. So to answer Mr. Richmond's question is yes, they would have to abide by the Subdivision Map Act, which is a statewide act, and also follow regulations of the city of Hollister as well.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other speakers? Is that it? Okay, is there a motion?
Move to approve resolution number 2018-222.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
No. Motion carries 3-1. Move to item 13.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is another property within that same 13 acres, 13 parcel sites that also received pre-zoning, that also received approval of the environmental impact report. And so at this time, this is another annexation agreement, essentially with the same stipulation as the previous one. This is just addressing another property, actually two properties within the site. There has to be an annexation agreement that's made with every individual property owner, and that annexation agreement, there's a stipulation that carries on for if there's a different owner in the future, it carries on. So essentially, this is just another annexation agreement for two different parcels owned by the same property. Any questions for staff?
Thank you. Any questions? Do we have any speaker cards?
There are no speakers.
Okay. Same statement stands again.
Fair enough.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve resolution number 2018-223.
I'll second the motion.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
No. Motion carries 3-1. Move to item 14.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this item is essentially the second part of the annexation agreement that was just approved, and essentially is asking the city council to approve a resolution sending the LAFCO initiation to begin LAFCO proceedings for annexation for these same two properties that were just annexed, that were just approved with the annexation agreement. So essentially, approving this resolution would allow the applicant to apply to LAFCO for annexation and start that process with LAFCO now. So are there any questions for staff?
Any questions? Vice Mayor Luna?
Abraham, I'm not going to ask you the same question I did before. I asked you with the time frame of when LAFCO, because you said it was about 8 weeks.
At minimum, if they do determine that the application is complete, it can be as soon as 8 weeks.
And just for transparency for the public that is watching to know, when these actually annexations go to LAFCO. It takes about 8 weeks for approval, but it's a public hearing
Correct.
where people are invited to come in and
Correct.
voice their opinion and make commentaries before LAFCO actually votes and proceeds with that. From that point on, we are not saying that anything is being built or even considered for possibly what? What kind of time frame? Are you looking 3 years, 5 years, 10 years?
It all
It's
depends.
taken some time.
It all depends, Councilmember Luna. Yeah, so pending that they do get annexed, then at that point they can come back but the first part would be that we would require to see an overall plan of the whole entire site, not just individually the 13 parcels, but the whole entire site. That's one of the stipulations that the Planning Commission wanted to see, that carried over to you, and that you also agreed to.
So at that time, it can come back to City Council for any type of change, improvement, changes to that.
Correct. If it is annexed, then at that point, the Planning Commission is who has the discretion of approving the any type of tentative map or building on the site. But they would have to follow the process that the city has.
Yeah, because I just want the public to understand that these things are not done overnight. That
Correct.
these annexations, construction, whatever it's going to take, it's not going to be done with the next 2 or 3 years, maybe 5 years, maybe 10, 20 years, like in the past.
And just to add to that, Councilmember Luna, this pre-zone process started back in 2015, and so they had to do traffic reports, they had to do all these type biological reports of the site, they had to evaluate the whole area, and until we got those reports ready and indicated any type of significant impacts on the project, and then ways that we can reduce those impacts to less than significant per the mitigation measures on the environmental impact report. That's when it came before you in June for the first time for entitlements of the pre-zoning only. But technically it started back in 2015, so it's been about a 3-year process of gathering all of the technical reports that are needed in order for us to make that environmental
So it's taken about 3 years, Abraham, to get here, and then from here on, you never know how many years it's going to be before actually anything is developed. And that's what I want the public to understand, that it isn't done tomorrow or next year or anything, or even 4 years from now. You know, it's something to be considered, and it's not just people to understand that.
Correct.
But thank you for your explanation.
You're welcome, Councilmember.
But just let me ask you a question here, for clarification again. From this point on, once it is approved, it can be built within a year or two.
From this point on, it goes to LAFCO, and then once LAFCO approves,
after the LAFCO part of it, it could be done in a year, 2 years.
Yeah,
absolutely, right?
Pursuant to LAFCO's approval, then it can come to the Planning Commission, and then it can be Planning Commission. It can be as soon as 8 weeks approval, and then from there, there's a final map requirement, which that can be like another 4 months or so, 6 months. So it depends on all the criteria that they have to meet. But
so it could happen between 6 months to a year after LAFCO approval.
It could technically, if it's an aggressive schedule, and they meet all the requirements, it could. But it just depends on the applicant meeting all the regulations, including the overall design of the project.
Right. I just want to be clear. It could happen within a year, 6 months to a year.
That we can see the plans and entitlements. It could potentially, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any student cards?
Item A14, resolution number 2018-224, a resolution for application by the City of Hollister requesting the Local Agency Formation Commission of San Benito County to initiate proceedings for the annexation of territory of the parcel identified as APN 019170083 and 019170084. The first speaker is Raul Escarino.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. How are you guys doing? Just quick input on this, I guess. Looks like everybody's giving their input. I got a different perspective than everybody. Just recently, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about my Facebook. anyways, my Facebook post, I asked the people of the city of Hollister, the people of Hollister, what they think about growth. Now, they're saying 3 years, 4 years, 5 years for this to be developed. We already know they want their money, so it's going to happen within a year or two, tops. My question is, as the members of the board, do we not listen to what the people want? I mean, if they say no to growth, fix the infrastructure of the city first, I mean, isn't that what, the council's thing is, to listen to the voice of the people? I might be mistaken. Last time I checked, politics is you represent the people. Lately, I feel like nobody's voices have been heard. So, sorry, I'm a little nervous, not used to being up here. But, so that's just my question, is if the people say no, don't build, can it wait a couple years? And maybe have these guys come back once we get a couple problems, fixed, a couple more roads fixed? I mean, that's just my question, I guess, question/opinion, is does it have to be now? Can it wait? Or do we have to wait for the next selection of board members to make that decision? I mean, you can ask the people behind me. I'm pretty sure a lot of them agree with me. Kind of slow down the growth and just worry about the problems at hand. Another elementary school just means you're going to throw a bunch of more high schoolers. I'm pretty sure, police department got enough calls from crazy high schoolers to have to worry about a lot more. Not that they're crazy or anything, but, we got a lot of kids for just one teacher. I can imagine, Oh, sorry, I didn't see all you guys are here.
They're all here.
You guys are good. You guys are doing your homework. That's good. Yeah, I stand with you guys. Anyways, kind of had to throw a little joke in there. Anyways, but yeah, that's just my opinion is, shouldn't we be listening to the voice of the people and try to get the infrastructure built and, fix the problems at hand rather than keep building, because you can keep building, but it doesn't mean everything commercial is going to come, or it doesn't mean that, businesses are going to come. I mean, I don't see in the contract that it says if we build, Google is going to come, or if we build, IBM is going to come. I don't see that anywhere. So that's just my opinion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
There are no more speakers.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion from the council?
Motion to approve resolution number 2018-224.
I will second the motion.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
No. Motion carries 3-1.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. We're going to move to public input. This is the time for anyone in the audience to speak on any item not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed and given to the city clerk before speaking. When the city clerk calls your name, please come to the podium, state your name and city for the record, and speak to the city council. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Please note that state law prohibits the city council from discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda. Do we have any speaker cards tonight?
Yeah. First speaker is Elizabeth Schneider.
Good evening, council members and community. My name is Elizabeth Schneider, and I live at 931 Meridian Street. My family has owned our home since 1982. My husband and I bought it from my parents in 1999. Since the early 90s, we have always had at least one car parked on the street in front of our home without a problem. Earlier this year, with the development of the Serrato Estates, Meridian Street was widened and restriped. In these pictures, you can see that the middle line and right lane were moved 5 feet closer to the residential side of the street. Because of this, my vehicles have been hit 4 times by hit-and-run drivers in the past 8 months. On February 15th, my green Honda Civic was hit with the bumper and taillight. It was annoying. We fixed it with glue. It works. On May 25th, our gray Civic had the driver's mirror sheared off. Again, this was an annoyance, but we replaced it. On July 22nd at 12:20 a.m., our gray Civic was hit at full speed, pushed over the curb and into the neighbor's driveway. It was a total loss. The other driver drove away, but called the police department the next day to turn themselves in. This was very upsetting. but we were able to replace it. And most recently, on September 2nd, my green Civic was hit again. This time more than the first time, and it is technically totaled, as you can see, but I'm still driving it. It was hit enough to push it into our pickup, damaging the bumper, and again, the driver drove away. This time, my car cannot be replaced because it only has liability insurance, and the other driver drove away. I have contacted city departments after every accident through your city portal. It was only this last time when I sent a direct email to Brian Swanson, the mayor, the police chief, that I received a response. Thank you, Brian. I found out that for their street to be restriped, there needs to be a traffic analysis report. I would like to see that report because the restriping with the shifting of the lanes in addition of a bike lane led drivers directly into the path of my cars, which means you are liable for my damage. I understand that traffic analysis reports take time, and it will take time to get a new report that will hopefully alleviate this mess. In the meantime, I will wait and listen for the next time my car is hit. I would like to thank the mayor and Brian Swanson and the other city employees who did come out, and I appreciate the work that was done last Tuesday, curving the bike lane and putting in reflectors. But it can't be the final fix. Within 6 hours of the work being done, the reflectors were run over by a driver. And even with the reminder of the radar machine recording speeds for the last 5 days, drivers are still not driving 30 miles per hour on Meridian Street. I truly hope you are listening and pay attention. Next time this happens, one or more of my family or myself may be in the car or exiting the car and may be hurt or killed. I do not want this to happen, and I hope you don't either. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Marty Richmond.
Good evening again, Marty Richmond from Hollister. Now that I've all made you all mad, I'm going to ask you for a favor. So don't hold it against me. I would like to ask the City Council at the earliest opportunity to adopt a goal, an important goal, and that goal is to make the City of Hollister the best equipped and ready city of its size and revenue class in the entire state of California to respond to a natural disaster. We should be number one. What brings this to mind? Well, I was going to wait until next month. Today is a month from today exactly is the 29th anniversary of the Loma Prieta earthquake. And right now, the reason I decided not to wait is because right now in North Carolina, my daughter, my two adult grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren are riding out the Florence hurricane. But you know, the hurricanes come every couple of years there in North Carolina. They're used to it. And they always get warning because the weather service says, hey, there's a hurricane coming. The truth of the matter is we still not sure we'll ever get a warning of a major earthquake. And it's been 29 years, and we tend to forget what happened 29 years ago. And I decided it should not wait. I should give you an opportunity to do something as early as possible. We need do a lot of things, in my opinion. We need to reorganize who's responsible here. We've got 65% of the people in the entire county live here. If you count the people immediately around Hollister, like Santana Ranch and Ridgemark, you're probably talking 80% of the people who live in the county. And we're not going to leave our buddies out, but we need to be ready to respond. The best thing would be to earthquake-proof the entire town. We can't do it because it's too expensive and it would take too long because we have old buildings. But in 5 years, we could have the best response. But to do that, we have to reorganize. We have to get the fire department to be the lead agency for that. We've got to go after the kind of equipment we need to do it. We've got to make sure all the plans are up to date. And it'll take 5 years. And if we have an earthquake before then, we'll be at least a year closer to doing it perfectly. Right now, I'm afraid we're not ready. And an earthquake can come tomorrow because it's not going to ask me for permission. And if it does, the people who never experienced a big one are going to be awful surprised at how much damage it can do in half an hour. So I want you to adopt this policy and then work to put it into effect. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Tammy Avalos.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Tammy Aviles. I live in Hollister. I am a member of the Coalition for a New Community Library and Resource Center, and I just wanted to give you an update that we're continuing to meet and plan and organize, and I wanted to extend an invitation to everyone present. Our next meeting is this Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. at the library. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter Hernandez.
Hello, Mayor, City Council. Thank you again for 3 minutes. I just wanted to give you a little feedback. It relates to the not so popular sign ordinance. I know this last month the mayor had asked, or 2 weeks ago I believe it was, to try to bring it, suspend the ordinance, at least the subjective part of it, which is the neon lights, and so anyways, the point is I'm here to give you a little feedback, not to just say, hey, I know that my wife posted on Facebook. The whole idea was to actually educate or let our customers know that we're open. We had to take down a $700 sign. We put a lot of heart into it, and we actually did sign up with the HDA. We got feedback about what the ordinance actually was supposed to be about, and ultimately it didn't mention neon signs. Granted, I looked it up. It is in the municipal code, but it doesn't change the fact that it didn't, the whole body, the committee body that was basically a reference point for you guys on your decision making with the municipal code. They were the ones that's supposed to educate me on the idea that if neon signs weren't something that I should be doing, that they would tell me ahead of time before I spent the $700. At the end of the day, it still doesn't make sense. I go to plenty of cities, really nice cities, I think that show a lot of character, that do have neon signs, and it's not that big of a deal over there. At first I heard it was maybe a fire hazard. That doesn't seem to be the reality. Again, the mayor had asked for it, and for some reason it didn't get put on. I don't understand why. It doesn't seem, as Raul actually had mentioned, doesn't seem like we listened to at least the people's request. So just to give you a little feedback, again, I'm actually involved in this whole thing. I actually showed up. I was invited by Gina from the HDA to go to the Economic Vitality Committee. 90% of the meeting was about a whole lot of other stuff, not relative to actually building businesses. It had to do with the 10,000-foot view, which makes sense. It was very important stuff. I'm not saying it didn't have value. They talked about the gavel and bond. They talked about the 1% sales tax. They talked about a whole lot of other things. And I said, this whole time I was here, I didn't hear anything about how you're going to help me with my business. And I get it. You guys are busy people, and those things are very important. But if that's not what the focus is, then maybe it shouldn't be called Hollister Downtown Association. And to a certain extent, maybe they shouldn't get involved in how I run my business, at least as far as the neon sign goes. So all I'm saying is, if you're not going to help my foot traffic, then at least maybe get out of the way so that I can focus on my foot traffic and try not to make my life a little bit harder. So I'm just trying. The reality that we live in is every single day is a day of lost dollars. And you guys might not think it's as big of a deal, but I see the big difference, and I can guarantee you we actually just had a meeting that was about 6 businesses, and we all said the same thing. Yes, neon signs matter, and ultimately we see the difference from that's one variable. The reality is we know every day when we lose money because of these ordinances that actually don't really encourage commerce, they actually discourage it, and that's been my experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kevin Stepp.
Good evening. Thank you, Council. Real quick, I just want to kind of back up what Marty was saying a few minutes ago about emergency response. I'm a member of the San Benito County ham radio operators, and just want to let folks know that there is a net behind that a lot of people probably don't know about, that there is a communications network behind the scenes that is set up for emergencies like that. And they just had an emergency exercise, I think it was last week, a yellow alert they called it. And the San Benito County group did a really good job compared to some of our unnamed neighboring counties. And I won't mention those Monterey counties that, had work to do. But that's what those exercises are for, to fine-tune those kind of operations. But the San Benito County did real well in that group, and we've got a real good group of the search and rescue group behind the scenes that are there for that kind of a thing. So I just wanted to throw that in there so everybody knows that there is stuff like that going on behind the scenes. It's the San Benito County Aries group. So just want to throw that in there.
Thank you very much.
There's no more comments.
Okay. Tell you what, let's take a 5-minute break. There's a lot of students that need to get their paperwork stamped. They want to go home and do their homework. So come on up, students.
never know. Thanks.
Have Chief go arrest him and bring him back.
Opening that would solve or at least slow down the problem a little bit. It's disappointing to hear that they've already been hit. At the same time, we have made contact. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, or Brian, we talked to Kimley Horn.
Our consulting traffic engineer was there this morning to analyze it,
Okay.
and we'll be getting a traffic report from them.
Okay, so we'll talk about restriping that corridor basically from Sarah Vista all the way to the bypass. All the way from, or is it, Sarah Vista to the far east, and restripe that whole corridor all the way down to the bypass. Because what we are probably going to do is do some traffic calming with adding the so it is true that during different developments at different stages, things have changed out there. And I think we're also going to evaluate it as when Memorial goes through, correct? And when Memorial goes through. So it'll be all striped appropriately. And that would be my report. Thank you.
City Manager, may I please clarify that was October 4th, Thursday, 7 a.m., here for a what type of meeting?
For the downtown businesses, we do our economic meetings, but this one's going to be focused on the signage.
So it's going to be a downtown business economic meeting focused on signage?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is that fair?
It's a business quarterly meeting.
Our business quarterly meeting. Thank you. And then the HDA has one at Vets Hall on September 20th at 6.
City Manager, when we talk about the study, one of the things Caltrans pointed out when we asked them to do a study about the left turn lanes, they came back and agreed that there might be a need for a left turn on Meridian and Airline, but didn't agree with Santa Ana and Airline as far as a left turn.
Dedicated?
Dedicated left turn.
Okay.
But what they did point out was that their study did indicate there was some issues there, and they recommended doing a larger study of the area for the city. And I had brought that back about a year ago. So I think if we can have that engineer look at that whole area of the corridor, get that traffic flowing. And a big part of that depends on punching through with Memorial.
Right.
So,
okay, so what we can do, I'll talk to Brian in the morning. We'll see if we can amend their scope a little bit to look at not only the Memorial Street extension to Santa Ana and what effect that has on the Santa Ana bypass intersection as well.
With the airline, exactly. From
okay.
Meridian, Airline, Santa Ana, that whole area.
Okay.
There were some issues pointed out by Caltrans.
No problem.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
Yeah, just coming from our COG world, we're aware of a project that they're calling it the Highway 25 curve correction on the bypass, but it also extends all the way into the city over by Hillcrest, that whole area, and they're talking about doing all new light timing, cleaning up all the landscape that's been issues and we get complaints about that looks horrible as you're driving through our city, as well as the curve correction. So that probably maybe you should have some communication with them to make sure that we're all on the same page so we don't have two independent projects. And they're looking at starting that in October, November, so it's coming up pretty soon.
Quick, right?
Yeah, pretty quick.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that it?
That's it.
All right, we're going to move to item E1, public hearing.
Back in 2020, before we had an elected mayor, as you know, I'm sorry, 2012.
Forward to 2020.
In 2012, before we had elected mayor,
Back
you guys
in
used to choose a mayor amongst yourselves. In 2012, when this issue was the measure was put on the ballot, there were two questions asked of the citizens. The first was, should the mayor be elected, yes or no? The answer was yes. The second question asked was, should it be a 2-year term or a 4-year term? The results were a 2-year term. In our current municipal code, it currently reads 2/4-year term, and it should just say 2-year term. So all I'm doing right now is correcting the code to read as the voters voted in 2012 to read a 2-year term for the mayor. And that's all that this is doing, is just correcting the municipal code.
But I want the 4-year term.
We'd have to ask that question again.
We didn't pass.
That's all this is. Yeah.
Any questions from council?
I did.
Vice
Just a
President?
comment. So it's just a language change.
It's just
You're
strictly
dropping the
language.
4.
I am just dropping the 4, correct.
All right.
It's almost an administrative error, but I'd rather do it openly and not just, transparent.
Okay. This time I'll open public hearing. Do we have any speakers?
No, Mr. Mayor?
This time we'll close public hearing. Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make go ahead. I'll defer to Vice Mayor Lunar and second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move to item F1.
Thank you.
Enrique, that would be you.
That'd be me or Mr. Mayor. This was an item that was requested by you, Mr. Mayor, to put on for the emergency, the homeless shelter. Anyway, so Enrique's here. Or I thought I saw Jim too. Is he? Just go ahead.
I don't know. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Enrique Arriola, Deputy Director of San Bernardino County Health and Human Services Agency. I'm here before you for the approval of resolution declaring a shelter crisis within the city of Hollister. This current fiscal year, the governor and legislator approved funding for local government jurisdictions for what is being called the Homeless Emergency Aid Program as part of SB 850. And in order to be eligible for these funds, there must be in each jurisdiction an approved declaration of a shelter crisis. The county of San Benito got theirs approved, I think, about a month ago, and San Juan Bautista will be getting theirs approved in the next month or so. So we're here before you to get this resolution approved. The no-fund notice of fund availability was released recently, and with the due date in December. And if we, as a jurisdiction, as a continuum of care, which includes Monterey, Salinas, and San Benito County, there's approximately $12.5 million. And of that, we will be applying approximately $2.6 million to help different activities in support of housing homeless type of programs.
Okay. Is there any questions from council? Vice Mayor Luna?
Thank you, Enrique, for the report. My question to you is, in order to qualify for any funding, do you have to have a homeless shelter in place like you do, like we all do here in San Benito County, like maybe other counties don't have?
So these funds will be going to each continuum of care. So in the state of California, there's continuum of care to end homelessness, right, and funding will be going to those continuum of care. So they're called COCs. So each COC has been designated an allotment, and our COC, which San Benito County is a member of, has been, I think, allocated $12.5 million. So an eligibility doesn't have to be you have to have a homeless shelter, is as long as you build programs around homeless with the main goal in augmenting the shelters that are available or homes, beds that are available for individuals that are homeless.
Yeah, and my question to you was that because at the League of California Cities there was a workshop on homelessness, and people were actually bringing up that there's a possible funding, but as I heard from some of the speakers is you had to have a plan or you had to have something in place in order for your community region or group to be receiving those funds. And I know that you've done a wonderful job here in San Benito County with the homeless location. So that was my question to you, and I wanted to just make sure that in this resolution it would be covered.
Yeah, it is covered. There has been numerous meetings that have been taking place to assess the level of need. So there's actually a plan that has been worked on that will be submitted to the continuum of care, and the leadership group will eventually receive the plan for the entire COC. And San Benito's plan is about, like I said, $2.6 million with different activities. So there is a planned process that is part of these funds.
Thank you.
I can add, because I'm part of that group that meets.
Yes,
they're very
you are.
impressed on what San Benito County has done in the last few years to bring the permanent homeless shelter here. So it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. Okay, is there any other questions? Do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2018-225.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move to item F2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe there was a brief discussion about Proposition 5 by Councilman Clower. At the last meeting, we've put this resolution together for our city to take a stance and oppose Proposition 5. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, or if Mr. Clower would like to explain a little bit more, that would be fine.
Okay, yeah, last meeting I kind of spoke extensively on this and how scary it was for local governments and school districts as well. Proposition 5 is an extension of Proposition 60, which is already in play, allowing homeowners that are 55 and over to transfer their tax base from one county to another if the county that they're moving to has opted into that program. I believe there's 58 counties, and I think there's maybe 11 counties that actually accept people moving in with their tax bases from other counties. And there's a reason why we aren't one of them, because we are a what I would consider a move down county price-wise for our tax basis. You get a lot of people moving from San Jose. Everybody knows that. And as a real estate agent, I've talked to people who haven't moved here because they can't transfer their tax basis, because they want to bring their $400 property tax bill and sell their house for $2 million in Cupertino or wherever, and then live a wonderful life here and have very, very limited taxes, property tax-wise. So this is an extension of that, and the Nonpartisan Legislative Analyst's Office said in the first few years it would be a hundreds of $million hit to local governments, as well as hundreds of $1 million hit for school districts, getting up to and over $1 billion per year. I did some back-of-the-envelope numbers for our county based off of population, and it came out to like 1.7 for the local governments and around the same for the schools. So it's not a good deal for San Benito County. If it was, we'd already be opting into this program. So my hope is, with everyone's support, we'd be able to oppose this, and then Supervisor Medina's here. Hopefully the supervisors will also take this up, because I think this actually affects them more than it affects the city council.
And thank you for bringing that up. Very important. Is there any other questions? Do we have any speaker cards on this item?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We'll move to item F3.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may request, since the time that the agenda came out and was posted, we've had some comments about some clarifications. So what we'd like is to request that the council make a motion and continue this item to the October 1st meeting, so that we can make further adjustments and some clarifications to the request in the resolution.
Is there any questions or comments?
Just a comment quick, Mr. Mayor. I met with the city team pretty extensively about this today, and I think we need to just spend a little bit more time honing and fine-tuning this. I went back and I pulled up the 1977 parking assessment district for the downtown area, which there's a couple different sections down there. And essentially, we want to make sure that we are spelling out what this parking is, supposed to be for, for customers, public, etc. And then also there's some just language, too much language cleanup to just do now. And then one spot in particular that I'd like to point out that I think is pretty important, if I could find it here, talks about the funds that would be collected in lieu of, so if you don't have enough property in your area in the downtown district to do parking, then you can pay an in lieu of fee, so you can still do a project in that area. And then that in lieu of fee goes to actually parking spots, right? So we can have more parking for our downtown area. Some of the language is a little loose, and it indicates that perhaps this funding could be spent for streetscape improvement, intersection, transportation improvements, and enhancements, et cetera. So after seeing that, I suggest that we table this for a bit and clean up the language and then take another look at it later on. Thank you.
Thank you. I would agree, and I would add to that is we probably should take the time to look at some other cities, what they're doing throughout the Bay Area right now. I've seen a lot of communities that are doing projects that make sense for their downtown, and I think it wouldn't hurt us to speak to a few different communities and see what they have
Yeah, and
find out.
actually, and not to cut you off, it's essentially that's what we did, and I don't know how many cities we were looking, about 5, and they all have varying components to it, but this is kind of sort of a nice kind of compromise between all of those. But we can share with you what communities we looked at, and like I said, I think Councilman Gilio had a good point with some of the language on we have language like should when it should absolutely be shall, and voluntary, and it's not necessarily voluntary. So there are some things that we want to clean up a little bit. So would be good.
A lot of the communities I'm seeing now are requiring the newer buildings to build their own parking areas, so they're not taking up areas, and then they're allowing those that are renovating their buildings to work with existing and different ideas there. So again, there's a lot of different communities doing some good work out there. We really should take the time to do this right, so we could plan in place. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves having to build some very expensive parking spots. Okay, any other questions? Do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a motion to continue to? Do you need more time? Why don't we get more cities and figure out what we should do here? I'd like to get more information from different communities. Let's do this right. Let's take some time to do this right. All right.
To a date uncertain?
To a date uncertain at this point. Okay. Is there a motion? I guess that's my motion.
I'll second it. If you need me to make the motion because you're the chair, I can do that for you.
I could actually make the motion
Okay,
every once in a while.
I'll second it.
Okay. It's rare, but now and then. All right, the motion is second. All in favor?
All right.
All right, motion carries.
No.
No?
Yeah.
Okay, 3-1. All right, we're going to move to item G1, reports from City Council regarding their committees. Councilmember Clower?
Yes, I attended the Water Resources Association meeting, and the big takeaway that I had there was that the program to provide rebates for people who remove water softeners and change toilets and do plumbing water efficiency upgrades is going well, but at the same time, we have people who are moving into new or existing homes, and then there's companies that are soliciting them to put in the types of water softeners that aren't allowed, the salt and potassium water softeners. And obviously they're doing that without a permit, so we're not seeing that happen, but if you just drive around, you'll see that people have the type of systems that aren't allowed. So I believe Sean with the Water Resources Association has been in contact with city staff to kind of try to work on that a little bit.
Good, thank you. Vice Mayor Luna?
Well, I have a couple of meetings coming up Wednesday, this next coming Wednesday, Area Agency on Aging in Aptos at the Community Center. Those meetings are always at 10 in the morning, and they go on sometimes 2.5 hours. This time, we're going to have AARP present to give a report on community, a community involvement type of program for elders. And I'm sure there's possibility Pauline Valdivia will be attending as well. Sometimes she will drive over with me and goes together with to those meetings. So that's extremely important. I know that Assembly Member Ana Caballero's working with AARP and bringing those programs to local communities. So I'll report back on that. And then Wednesday, the 26th, I will be attending the AMBAG meeting in Corralitos Community Center. And those are the two that are upcoming before the end of the month.
That's always a very good barbecue there, by the way. Okay, Councilmember Gilio?
Mr. Mayor, not a lot to report. I did finish up we had a COG. We're examining our County Express and our specialized transportation provider. And we had an RFP session that I mentioned last time. That was an all-day session. They provided some additional feedback. The people that are applying for this to provide this service to the county, we reviewed that feedback and have turned in our final sheets. It's a confidential process that will now be, they'll be scored, and they will select a provider for both of those services. So that's on the horizon coming up. But we have a COG meeting coming up here shortly. Besides that, I don't have too many community meetings. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
I have the same. I didn't have any meetings, but tomorrow I have the Mobility Partnership meeting with Santa Clara County to discuss our future off-ramp there at Highway 25 and 101 and see what decision Santa Clara County has come up with. So we're hoping for good things there.
What time is that meeting, Mr. Mayor?
That is at 9:30 at Gilroy City Hall.
Thank you.
Anybody wants to attend, please come out. All right, we're going to move to informational reports. Councilmember Flower.
Nothing to report.
Vice Mayor Luna.
Yes, I wanted to report on the League of California Cities, September 12th and 14th, Long Beach Convention Center. There was 1,186 elected officials throughout the California that were present. Many, many workshops. Sometimes it was hard to go from one workshop to the other. It was pretty full, the convention center. It was very interesting workshops. One that was standing room only, and if you haven't read about it, Beaumont, California, I think everybody needs to go online and read about Beaumont, California. What happened is with their taxation program, and that's why they stress the importance of I'm sure you know about Beaumont, our attorney. What they stressed was how important it is for elected officials to understand their role, especially when it comes to a taxation, when it comes to, finances of the city. Apparently, some of the city officials in Beaumont, California, figured that everything went into the general fund, and they could spend it, and they did, and they all went to jail. So they were all fined, they were all fired and removed, and that was starting with the city manager to the finance director to the attorney to everybody else that was in that line. It was very interesting. You could imagine what that room looked like. Good thing I got a seat. I was like in the 5th row. But standing room only. I think every city official was there. And it was interesting because I think it's a lesson learned. And if you don't really know the finances of a city and you think that anything that comes in can be spent, then it's a learning experience. Somebody's got to read about it. So anyway, the conference was very exciting. They had 287 exhibitors there, and I think every exhibitor wanted you to take something from them. I met some exhibitors that knew staff with the city of Hollister. I met quite a few exhibitors that I think read everything is what's happening on Hollister, and that information goes out and impacts our city. And so I had a lot of comments made to me about our city. Some people, like I mentioned before, some people think the city of Hollister is the new Santa Monica, Malibu, because everybody wants to move here, So I know, and then I was speaking with some elected officials from the Bay Area that said, we're pretty close to retirement, so maybe we'll see you in Hollister, Mickey. So we'll see. But anyway, it was quite an honor to attend, actually, the Beacon Awards, Spotlight Awards, and I did bring the gold level award back for the city of Hollister. I think it's a plus for us. There was a lot of cities that were present, and they were actually asking how these awards came, how did we receive these kind of awards? Well, it was an energy saving award, where the city did save energy and was recognized for it. So I really believe that we have to thank everyone here for doing their part in saving energy for the city of Hollister. It was an honor to be there to represent the city. I did bump into Bill Rivera once in a while at the expo, but it seems like we were all busy talking to other people and other elected officials. And again, you learn from everyone. You learn something every day, and you learn from them. And I was just so glad to have had that opportunity to mingle with so many other city officials from California. So thank you for the opportunity to allow me to go and represent the city. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Gilio?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the time. I appreciate it. Regarding the Meridian striping, restriping issue that we had a public comment on, I received notice on that. I believe it was last Saturday, not this Saturday, but the following previous Saturday or Sunday. And I got to tell you that I sent an email to city staff, and there was an immediate response, even on a Sunday, that they were going to go out and take a look at this. It might have been 2 weeks ago. I might have the date off a little bit, but and then I think within 3 or 4 days, it was restriped and done, and the poles are up, at least temporarily, while they're doing the traffic study. So I want to really thank the roads crew for staying on that stuff. You guys really, I mean, it shocks me how quickly you guys can get out there and get these things done and evaluated. So thank you for doing all that. The Valley View Park Sports, multi-sports facility is up and running. Basketball, hockey, soccer, Mr. Chambliss, is that correct? It has a nice layer, all the stripes, so you can go out there and enjoy that great facility. And thank you, staff, for getting that done. You know, instead of paying outside people to come in and do it, you guys take the time to come and install all that stuff, and I really appreciate that. So thank you very much. Emergency Operations Center, this was something that was brought up earlier and echoed by a few folks. I just wanted to mention that I think it's critical that we are have a functioning EOC, and also we do as many test operations as possible. Chief, Urban Shield is one up in the Bay Area. They do. I don't know if we can get involved in that, but simulated earthquakes. You can do all these different things so that let's pretend like it happened, and how are we going to respond? What resources do we have? Are we ready? And that can ferret out a lot of potential unreadiness. And I'm happy to hear that we have a plan moving forward, and we're working on all that. So thank you guys all for that. The signs in the downtown. I don't remember the date. Maybe somebody can throw it out, but I would say it's probably about in the beginning of the year or the end of last year. I believe it was the Chamber of Commerce actually hosted it, but it was at Fisher's Restaurant. We had Councilmember Friend come down there. It was a listening session to hear about what the issues were. At that time, it happened to be A-frame signs and sidewalks. There were some issues with that and enforcement. And the process stalled, and ultimately, I will take responsibility for it. I was at the meeting. I didn't do anything to make sure it went further forward. I thought it was being handled, and we dropped the ball as the bottom line. So what I would like to do is make a commitment to the downtown business owners that we are going to meet on this. It sounds like we already have a plan. It sounds like you had a meeting already and got some feedback, so we're on it. And I think we should get it out there because they left, the folks that were commenting there, Mr. Hernandez. We can message him, possibly somebody can talk to him, let him know that the sign ordinance has been suspended in the downtown until we come up with a final. Is that correct? Because every business matters down there, and we this ordinance, what I learned, was adopted years back, and at the time it seemed like the right ordinance to have. But I think these ordinances need to be fluid, and we need to get that feedback. So I support whatever you guys come up with in that area. And on that note, kind of tying into all that, we have 5 applicants for the District 1 seat. Is that correct? So that's pretty exciting to have 5 people. I would highly recommend that the city staff potentially extend, at least let those folks know that there's a meeting coming up, perhaps if they want to attend, because it would be potentially their district that would have this issue that they need to pay attention to, and that's the 20th, right? So that's before they would be selected, right? The Downtown Association meeting for the signs for feedback. So I don't know if there's a way that if you have a contact for them, to just let them know that, hey, there's something coming up you may want to pay attention to, so they're up to speed if they're selected. Just a thought. I mean, I'm not saying we have to do it. It was just a thought because it would be their district, and I think it would be great to have them up to speed if they're willing to do it. Obviously, they're not there yet, so it's totally up to them if they want to be there or not. I think that's it, Mr. Mayor. Sorry for taking so much time.
That's okay. I, too, want to thank the staff, Brian, Danny, Mary, for moving so quickly on that incident or that problem on Meridian. I, too, got that call and went and took a look at that. Couldn't believe the problem there. But by the next day, there was a picture sent to me with the cones up and the restriping. I was like, wow, these guys are good. So thank you for making that happen so fast. It's obviously very important to move on these issues. I do have another project for you. It's a street light that's not working correctly. I'll send you the pictures of that next. And one of the originals. And also, as far as the EOC, there is a plan out there, and we talked about this several years back, as a matter of fact, and that conversation was, when that earthquake hits here, and it will hit here, nobody's going to come bail us out, as I think Bill pointed out. And the priority at that time was, let's put together the best plan we can have, make sure we're ready for it, because it's coming. So there's a good plan out there. It can always be improved, though, and I absolutely agree with that part. And that's all I have for my report. City Manager?
Nothing to report.
All right. City Attorney?
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief?
Two things. One, we do have a fully functioning EOC right now. Just last Tuesday, myself and the fire chief actually met to reassign 2 personnel to actually go to the training once again. We all are fully trained and staffed for it as well, and have a plan to use the entire facility as an EOC, because that's what the police department was actually designed for. But we are all staffed up. We do have all the necessary equipment in there. It gets tested all the time right now. But we are going to assign folks that will take our places as well when we're gone. So we'll have them go through all the classes at CSTI in San Luis Obispo. That'll be next year. There's actually 6 classes each person needs to take. So we actually talked about that last Tuesday, and we have them already assigned. The second thing is...
Chief, if I could interrupt you for a second. I think in an emergency situation like that, council members play an important role, too. Is it something that council members should be taking the course or in some of these classes?
So there is a role for council in the NIMS scenario, and really what it is you would be the body that would make decisions at the level for expenditures, and you're also part of that as well.
Well, and they're the ones. You're the folks that actually do the declaration of an emergency.
Absolutely, but what I mean, so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, so you need to get there as soon as possible to do that, adopt that resolution, so that we can get started.
Right, and we're set up for that as well.
Then you can go home.
Yeah.
Just make sure it doesn't happen when I'm on my road trip.
Oh, yeah, the second thing, the 29th annual Hollister 5K Ribbon Run is the 27th of October. There are sign-ups right now. You can just Google that. It's actually runsignup.com. You can find the Hollister Red Ribbon 5K on there. It is the 29th year. It'll be downtown again, like it has been the last few years. And we expect to have a huge turnout this year as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. City Clerk?
I actually have 3 things. It's funny because Nova and I just actually went to a training last week on OES. And 2 things that I took away from that was whenever you're staying in a hotel, they say to count the number of doors to the exit so that should you get visually impaired, you can at least feel your way to where the exit is and be able to escape, which I thought was an excellent idea. I never thought of that before. Also to read to memorize the layout of the evacuation plan anywhere that you are, which is something I've never really you see it, but do you really ever look at it? So that was just interesting that we would be bringing that up. Nova and I have some training to do in September, and also in October, Paul and I will be going to the ECS Laserfish training to start the first step to implement the upgrade that you guys already approved for us this year to Avante, which should work hand in hand with the new agenda management system. So I just wanted to let you know that. Thank you. Anything, Nova?
No.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to say something to you, Chris. If you want an emergency plan, I'd be willing to work on that. I was the only one, Adela Gonzalez and I were the only ones in this building locked up at 5:04 on October 17th. And I can tell you that every door that we tried was jammed in this building, and we could not get out.
This room, when there's no lights on, is pitch black. Pitch black.
But this building is so heavy that this building was not moving this way. It was going up and down. and I was downstairs, so I ran upstairs through everything, but we could not open the doors. So it's a terrible feeling, and I think there should be some kind of plan for the employees, because the cabinet started to fall over and we were right in the middle. So anyway, scary.
Thank you. Brian, can you reach up and check those emergency lights for me? Oh, we better have them. And I would actually, all kidding aside, those should be checked, because the backup batteries die, and you don't know until it's too late. So, thank you. We'll move to item F3. Is it F or G3? G3.
Good evening, council members. You almost made it without a PowerPoint, so I'll give you a short one here. I've been asked to give you a report on the Calaveras Park improvements and also the Rancho sports facilities improvements from, I don't know how to work this. This goes back to April of 2016, 17? Okay. So basically there's a picture of the completed playground. That's the older child playground, the one with all the cool animals on it. That's the younger child playground. I didn't zoom in on it so that you could see that the wooden bridge of death, as somebody told me it was once before, because all the boards were rotten and loose and everything else, is now gone. It's ADA accessible concrete. That is the pavilion with the new roof. Reminder that specific roof is metal. We've already found chunks of concrete up on it, and I just wish I was there to see the look on the hoodlum's face that threw it up there when it went dong instead of cracking a bunch of very expensive tiles. So it looks absolutely beautiful, looks just like it was built, and it's vandal proof, finally. They did try to burn it down the other day.
Don't say that.
But anyway.
Thank you, Joe.
Details are the total cost of the playground was $330,000, and then the total cost of the roofing for the pavilion and the restroom was $70,000, for a total of $400,495.24. Had allocated $500,000, so we came in $100,000 below budget, effectively. Actually, thank you for reminding me. I met Emily out there. She was 4 years old, and she wanted you to know that this is her absolute most favorite park until, she did put an until in there, we build her the butterfly and fairy park. So that's a challenge from Emily to get the butterfly and fairy park going. So I'll be working on that. And then finally, Rancho Sports House, as you remember, part of the original contract with the school district way back when was that we would go ahead and get a sports house built out there. We allocated $400,000 to make that happen, and it has run into some difficulties. The soil out there is poor, and as such, because it's at the school site, OSHPD will not allow improvements to that site without some additional geostabilization of the soil. So the cost estimates are coming in at about $610,000 right now. As we have allocated $400,000, that leaves the school district about $210,000 short. They're working to try to get some donations from contractors, and they're in the process of actively doing that. They did ask, and I'm going to ask if you'd like me to come back with a motion to move that $100,000 that was saved from the original project into this project. If you'd like me to bring back a future item, I can. If not, then that $100,000 will stay in the, I believe it came out of the park development fees. Yeah, park development fees.
Interesting. Councilmember Clower?
Yeah, so I would support that with a caveat. When we actually negotiated this agreement, there was some very specific things, and if anybody has been paying attention for a long time, When it's a contract's a contract. I stick to the contract. If it's a good contract for us, great. If it's a bad contract for us, too bad. The way the contract was written, that we were going to put in the Calveras playground, and that we were going to give the $400,000 from the sale of the street to the school district, which we did. And that got us to the point where we could actually negotiate on the rest of the terms with the new agreement for the shared facilities, the shared use facilities, the joint use facilities. So this is, in effect, opening up that whole negotiation again. And I know from you coming up here probably 30 times in the last 4 years that you always pad your numbers so you don't have to come back. And that, I'm glad we came under budget, but part of that was because you always pad your numbers so you don't have to come back. So what I would propose, if we are interested in making these funds available to the school district, is that we get paid back on the back end with some sort of reduction on the agreement that we have. Because we agreed to that number based off of some certain things that were put in place. And I think it would be hopefully doable and at least fair that the school district would let us see that on the back end with a reduction in what we pay each year for that use of those facilities.
Okay. That actually is a very good recommendation. Or maybe look at some of the how else we could save some money with some value engineering. There's always a way. You can look at something else, but I actually think your recommendation is a good recommendation. Vice Mayor Luna?
Mike, I would just like to keep the 99,000. It was something that was expanded. I think it would benefit another project. Mm-hmm. And if there's some way that something else could be worked out to cover the difference, then I would go for that.
Councilmember Gilliam?
Yeah, I think we need to work and be the best partners we can be with the school district, the high school district, the county. We all got to work together. And I actually, Councilmember Clower, great idea. I didn't think of that. If they need the money front loaded so that they can get the project done, and perhaps what is it, $70,000 a year per park roughly? Is that a rough number? And if 50 per park, if there's a chance that we can get a reduction on that over, whatever, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever that is, to ease it for you guys at the school district, and then we can pay that money back to our park fund, because we have a couple of huge parks coming up that benefit everybody, not just Hollister, but the county. I mean, some big ones, some great parks. So I'm pretty excited about those, and we're going to need every dollar that we can get for that. But if that helps to front load it and then get paid back over a long period of time, I'd be okay with that. It sounds like a good idea.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yep.
All right. Is that it?
That's it. Thank you. Have a good night.
Do we have any speaker cards on this item? No?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. H, I, J, and K, there's no business. Is there
Motion to adjourn?
Is a motion?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Yeah, you beat me to it, man. What the heck?